Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Fadhwa. I am your talk show host for the Gems of Life talk show at CKMS Radio 102.7 FM Radio Waterloo, and follow us on YouTube, the Gems of Life talk show. Well, as always, I am happy that you're able to join our space. Thank you for taking your time to be here with us. I have a special guest with us here today. Kelly is on the show today, and she's here to show us and tell us the work that she does in our community. This is an episode that I will be doing on a monthly basis. Once a month, I bring in our local business community, and they talk about their businesses, their challenges, and their breakthrough moments. And we as a community are here to support them. So Kelly is here looking for your support as a community leader in our community, and you as a community member, how can you best help our local businesses? So Kelly, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Fadhwa. It's lovely to be here with you.
I am so happy you're able to be here. Kelly, do you mind just introducing yourself? I know the work that you do in our community. You work for Food4Kids Waterloo Region. And what is that like, especially now in the midst of the pandemic? How do you go from doing what you're doing and balancing life, your personal life, in the midst of the pandemic? How do you balance those two?
Oh, Fadhwa, this has been a very interesting year and a half. We actually started our experience with what everyone's calling pivoting back in January of 2020, when we had the teachers' strike at work, and it was an up and down situation for us, and pretty stressful with regard to getting the food out to the kids, because we didn't know week to week which day the schools were going to be shut down. And so we're a small team of 3 full-time people, and a lot of volunteers. We have 750 volunteers who give their time over the year. So it was a real stressful time. But then the pandemic hit, and that was not only for work a stressful situation, but emotionally inside. We all have families, we have children and parents who are in that elderly group, who it was a big concern. And then the kids that we feed, the people that we support, were undergoing so much stress. And we knew that we had to jump in with all of our strength in order to make sure that they were being supported 100% every single day, because we are essential and they are essential. So that was our experience this year.
Wow. Yeah. And just like you said, it seems like that theme, pivot. A lot of businesses had to learn how to do that, and growing their businesses and be able to support the community. How has your business, even how did you get into it? I know you have a name there, something to do with passion as well. And I don't want to give in too much. I will let you introduce that role that you do. How do you stay engaged? How do you stay connected to the community in these times of difficult times?
Well, we started the organization back in 2016. That's when it was registered. I'm the founder, but I have such a network of people behind me and standing alongside of me and actually pushing from behind to keep this organization growing. We recognized back in 2016 that there were approximately 2,500 to 4,000. It's a big number of children who were living with what we call chronic hunger, so severe food insecurity, not having enough food to get through the week. Families who are working really, really hard to ensure their children are taken care of, but just not able to meet the needs for so many reasons. So we thought, well, if we can start an organization where we're feeding them on weekends, that would be really wonderful, because we have school programs in the schools. We also have the food bank, and there's Make Court within the schools. But where we found the gap was when the kids went home on the weekends and then during summer holidays. So we focused on those areas. So making sure that every child in a family ages 1 to 14 in a family that's been identified by the school board as needing support, and of course they opt in personally. We provide food to their children. Each child gets their own bag of food on the weekends that has anywhere from 16 to 20 very nutritious food items, individual food items for the child that they can take home. And then they have something to eat all weekend. They have 2 breakfasts minimum, 2 lunches, a major dinner that they can have with the whole family, and then lots of snacks and lots of fruits and vegetables, which is really important. So where we find families really struggle with proteins and produce because they're very expensive. And so we make sure that we have really high quality items in those areas. So one of the things that is really important to us is that on the 12 weeks or 13, depending on the summer weeks where the kids are off school, that they have food every day. And we augment their ability to get food, the family's ability to get food, by providing approximately $50 per child worth of food for each child in our program. Now, we started out with 19 kids, but back in 2017 is when we actually operationalized. And now we are serving 860. So my job is to ensure that we have enough funding to, and that's where our community comes in order to help the kids that we're feeding. And it costs approximately $1,500 all costs in per child for a year. We say 1,000 because that's a great number that people can associate with and say, if we contribute $1,000, we're feeding a child for a whole year. And that is approximate because it actually comes out to be a bit more than that. But we feel if we can feed them all 40 weekends of the school year and then the 12 weeks every day, that we're setting them up for good health and good mental positioning. Because, you know, if you don't have enough food, you don't have the energy to do anything, especially not learn. You can't concentrate. You can't even play well because you don't have the energy and you're frustrated. Try and go a couple of days without food yourself and see what it feels like, how your energy levels swing and how your whole body feels terrible. And then you're seeing other people who can eat. So these kids are watching other kids that bring great lunches to school and have snacks, and they don't have that. So our goal is to try and normalize their living situations food-wise and give them the opportunity to be healthy and to be able to have energy and to know, this is the big thing, that their community really cares about them. They're not charity cases. They're people who are our neighbors. They live in our community, and we should protect the people in our community and help them. So that's our goal, is to feed the hope of children in our community.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And you really said it hit home for me. You know, it could be your neighbor, it could be a family member. We don't know what goes behind closed doors, right? Mm-hmm. And you may see somebody, a family walking about in the, on the street. You don't know what their struggles are. And especially for those families who have even more than one child, it may be very difficult to put food on the table to each one of their children. And I know last time when we had a conversation, you shared something with me, a beautiful story of a mother who did what she did for her children to make sure that her kids, she made sure that all her kids had a meal, and I would love for you to share that story with us, Kelly.
Well, there's so many stories that we have. There are stories about children who have really struggled. I can share a story that we have with regard to a young boy who he was 8 and he's now a little older, but he's been with us for several years. And you have to understand that the families that we feed, the children we feed, it's not a short-term fix. It's not a feed them this weekend and next weekend and they'll be fine. this is a long-term situation where the families just don't have enough, and they're in that cycle of poverty where they can't seem to get out. Very few of them can seem to get out. We need to fix that. That's not my role. I can't fix that. Well, all I can do is support and help until that fix is there. So we had a little boy who was making his lunch, and unfortunately, what he was making his lunch with was food that was very hard. And he had a knife and he was cutting it, and it slipped, and he cut himself quite severely in his hand. And so he was bleeding everywhere, and he was alone. So he didn't know what to do because the bleeding wouldn't stop. And so he just wrapped it up in a towel and he ran to school because he knew at least that someone there would be able to help him. So he met with the school people, like they took him in, the secretary and the principal came out and they said, you need stitches. It was quite deep. And he was just a little guy. And so they tried to phone his mother, and they tried for a couple of hours to get in touch with her. And she's working and she's so busy, and they finally got in touch with her and she came. And so he was sitting there for hours, and they were going off to the hospital to get stitches. And the taxi cab went out the parking lot and stopped at the end of the parking lot. And the little boy jumped out of the cab and ran back into the school, because this was a Thursday of a long weekend coming up. And he said, can I have my bag of food, please? I have to have my bag of food. I'm going to wait until it comes. And luckily, we had just delivered the food and it was sitting there, and he was able to get his bag of food. But this is a child, 8 years old, who understands that if he doesn't pick up his bag of food at school, he's going to go 3 days without food, with minimal food. And, you know, parents do the best that they can. They have very limited resources, and they purchase foods that are often as inexpensive as possible because they try to buy the most. Well, you know that the most inexpensive foods are carbs and foods with less nutritional value. Those foods are fine as fillers, but they're not long-term nutritionally development food. You know, that's not something that's going to build strong bones or blood vessels or their brain. So what we try to do is provide really good food. The kids know this. They understand their situation. So that was a very, very difficult, not really story, experience that we heard about. And there are many. So the mother, this is, excuse me, this came from actually a supporter of ours, a donor, who told us a story about his family. Now, he came from a family of 3 kids and his mother, who was a single parent. She worked very, very hard to put food on the table. And he was about 9 or 10 at this time. And he said, he came home and he said, you know what, Mom, what we learned at school today was that families, when they share and they sit around the table and they have dinner together, they can learn so much about one another, and it helps them be really, really good community members too, because they're sharing. So it's that family community that's so important in our lives. And so he told this story about when he was little, and he talked about his mother and how she was so amazing, but she never ate with them. And so he went into the kitchen and said, Mom, you have to eat with us because we have to be a good family community. And she sat him down and said, I would love to eat with you, but honey, there isn't enough food for me to have a meal like you and your brother and sister are having. There isn't enough food. I make this much money and we need this much money, which is way more than what I actually make, for us to survive. So she had put herself way down the ladder on being healthy herself. And he sat there and he looked at her and he said, Mom, from today on, you are never going to have to worry about food going forward, because I'm going to make sure that we all have food. He was just a small child. Kids know and they understand and they care about their parents and about their family units. It's very important to them to be part of a strong family unit. And so I can tell you this today, that this young man grew up to be a very solid person. And he has taken care of his mother and his siblings and done very well for himself because he had that strong determination. But it was that recognition that his mother had given so much to he and his siblings, him and his siblings, that 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 gave him the impetus to just do well for her. So these kids are special, precious children. They're not less than. They're just as important as everybody else, and we need to do something to help them out. So he said he wished that he would have had this program when he was younger, and so he makes sure that he supports the program on an ongoing basis. So it's really lovely to have supporters like that.
Yeah. Wow. That's just, I want to take a breather here. Wow. That's a beautiful story that you have shared, and heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
I know what that feels like, growing up in Africa. I know what that feels like when you don't know where your next meal is coming from. I know what it feels like when you eat that meal, you don't know, you don't have a guarantee where your morning, what you're going to have for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I know what that feels like. So I'm grateful that you're able to come in and share this, so our audience can not only listen to these stories, but also feel that impact within them to actually, to help others, to support you, to maybe look at their neighborhood and see what can I do in my neighborhood. We all have the ability to make a difference. You said this has started kicking in about 3 years ago. Somebody can start doing this today. You just feed one home. Just imagine when you have a mother who sacrifices her meal so that she can feed her kids because she doesn't have enough to feed her kids. My goodness, I'm a single parent. I have 2 kids, and I would do the same thing. If I'm in a place where I don't have enough for all 3 of us, I will starve myself so that my kids are able to eat. And that's a beautiful sacrifice that every parent will make for their children. And no parent would want their children to go to bed hungry, to go to bed not eating anything, or going to school without any meal. So this is not intentional. We shouldn't judge. We shouldn't say, oh, they should know better. We shouldn't be too quick to judge. Just imagine a young kid going to school and they have not eaten anything. That sense of belonging, Kelly, when you talk about other kids sitting there, opening up their lunch boxes and having their snacks and all kinds of snacks, and you have this child sitting there with nothing to eat. I don't think we should be going through that in this society, especially in North America, especially in Canada. No child should go without food, period. No child should go without food. And I think within ourselves, we have the ability to really do something about it. And I know you mentioned something really important, Kelly, and you said you don't have the ability to do that, to break this cycle of poverty, to break this cycle of poverty in our homes, right? And there's a lot of things that we can do, and there's a lot of things that we are not able to do, right? But any person who's listening to this show today, ask yourself, what is it that you can do today that would help contribute to a society? What is it? What is your skill? What is a talent that you have? What is the gift that you have? What is the ability and potential that you have within yourself? What are the resources that you have that can help others? Maybe it's training the families. Maybe it's training the women and the men. Maybe it's a single parent struggling. What can you do to help that single parent, to elevate her to a place where she can break that cycle of poverty and she's able to support her children? Kelly, I'm going to be the first one to say that I will work with you to help you with those families, bring these families to a place where they can feel impacted enough empowered enough, inspired enough to start working to a place where they can elevate their lives. I know they're working very hard. I know they're doing the best they can, but what is it that I can bring on the table that will will take them to the next level and the next step? So I do, I do commit to you giving my time today and helping you with those families that you work with and find a way that I can help them. So I make that commitment to you right now, Kelly.
Thank you, Fadhwa. That is very, very generous of you because I know you are busy and you are taking care of your own children. And through this pandemic, it's been very, very difficult. We can use help in so many areas. We have need for different volunteer situations. Right now with the pandemic being where it is and we're in complete shutdown, we are providing grocery cards to all of the families. And we've also had to pick up, and we call it picking up, we've had to add on an extra 95 children because the pandemic has been very, very hard on families. So we had a goal of 750 kids this year that we would try and feed. And that's, it takes a lot of money and we're not very old. And our community is very generous. But one of the things that we looked at was we had waiting lists within the schools. There were 95 kids on a waiting list in schools we already served. When you look at that and you go, wait a second, you're serving 20 kids in a school and you've got 4 that you're not in the same school. That's an equity issue. How would you like to be a parent with 4 children and you are feeding 3, but you can't feed the 4th? That doesn't make sense to me. So we as a staff looked at the waiting list, talked to the schools, and we approached our board and said, look, we are going to fundraise extra hard because we want to add on these extra 95 kids immediately because it isn't fair. It isn't fair. It isn't fair that any child doesn't have food, but it's truly not fair when there's no equity within the school, and schools work very, very hard to provide equity to all their students. So there are lots of ways to support our organization. Financially, absolutely. Next year, our budget's going to be $1.5 million, and we're only in our 5th year. That is huge budget for us to try and achieve. We have 3 staff. That's it. We work really, really hard to ensure that we can feed the kids. But our volunteers are the ones who work probably even harder than we do. They make sure that the food is prepared and gets out the door. They make sure they fundraise. They bring in friends and family, and we need more volunteers. We always need more volunteers. So if you can help by lending a skill, any skill that you have, just say, like, I can do this, whatever it is. I can tell you a quick story if we have time.
Yes.
There was a little girl, 9 years old, and she contacted us yesterday. I can say her name. Her name is Taya. And Taya learned how to crochet. So she crocheted scrunchies and she sold those scrunchies and she raised $250 for our program yesterday. And so she donated that yesterday. And she said, well, it's what she could do. Mm-hmm. And that to me is, gosh, the fact that she even thought to help the kids that we serve is huge. But then to take a skill set that she has and use it and have other people support her skill set to be able to feed kids, it's monumental. That's paying it forward in a major way. So anything like that is more than appreciated. We love it. And we thank everybody in such a big way for contributing to our kids and to our mission to make sure that kids are fed.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I just want to clarify the program that you do. I know you talked about the summer weeks as well as the weekends. And do you provide the kids with the meals on a daily basis during the school week year?
During the school week, we feed them on the weekends because there are school programs that bring snacks and everything to the schools. And we don't want to be a redundant program. We want to make sure we're filling a gap. So we feed them on the weekends. So Friday, the food bags go to the school by volunteers. They deliver them. So they will send out 860 bags will go out in bins to the schools. And then each of the children receive their own bags. And the families that have like babies, 1 to 3, or kids in grade 9, because we feed the kids up to age 14, so in grade 9, those bags go home with the children, or parents will go to the schools and pick them up. They'll walk down and pick them up. So each child has their own bag, and that goes out on the weekends. So there are 2-day weekends, there's 3-day weekends, and then there's Easter, which is the 4-day weekend. And then during the holidays is when we support them every day. We try and provide food and grocery cards, especially produce, to the families during the summer. You know, it's really important that they have lots of additional food. The kids are home. You know, they eat more when they're at home.
Yes,
that's what we found.
Yes.
During the pandemic, is kids eat far more because they graze all day long. They're not busy doing things. So they're grazing constantly.
So if somebody were to ask, what is the difference between your organization and the food bank, what would you say?
Well, we have 3 pillars that are very different. One is we only feed children, ages 1 to 14, so it's not for everyone. It's the quality of food we provide. We do not give the children or the families food that we have. We purchase food specifically for their needs. So just for an example, we have 44% of our children are halal. So we buy halal foods. We have 100 children that are babies or have allergies, dietary issues. So we make sure that we purchase food specifically for them. And we change the diet up every week. We try to replicate what we would eat, you know, what I would buy at the grocery store. So fruits and vegetables, we change every week. Proteins, we change every week. We make sure that they have a very good diet. So it's high in protein, low in sodium, low in sugars. But we do also give the children snacks. So I don't know if I have time to tell that story about the young boy that I ran into on the street.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Well, he was with a group of 7 boys, and he would have been 11, 12 years old. And they were coming from a store, and they'd all purchased bags of chips and chocolate bars. And we try to at least put in one thing that will normalize their living condition, make them like everyone else. You know, they have a treat. So that week on the Friday morning, we had put in bags of chips into all the kids' bags. And so this young boy was running across the street, and my car has badges like our logo all over the car. And so the little boy stopped in the middle of the street, and he looked at me, and he kind of looked closely, and I leaned forward, and so I could see him, and I smiled at him, and he looked at me and stopped in the middle of traffic and went, of course, I burst out crying, because there he is, 11, 12-year-old boy who realizes that bag of chips that he from us, but he was able to go out with the other boys, and he couldn't have afforded to go to the store and buy his own chips, but to take that bag out of his bag and say, hey, yeah, I can come. I have my own chips. You know, I can come to the store with you. I have my own chips. So I can be part of your group. I can be part of the social network. And I don't have to feel less than, because I have the same thing you're going to buy. And that was, I think, something far more than just feeding kids. You know, we were reaching their social networks a little deeper, what I thought.
Yeah, let me just stop you for a moment, Kelly. I think the internet was freezing on your end, so your words and your picture was not showing, was not
Okay.
connected. Yeah, and the quality
Okay.
kind of changed. Yeah, let me see again. Yeah, the quality even your camera kind of changed. It was fuzzy. So I would like for you to tell that story again, unfortunately, because the
That's
words,
okay.
yeah, it was lagging. So your words and the picture was not the same.
Yeah, we're under voice over IP, so that could be an issue. Yeah,
Yeah.
depending on certain times of
Okay.
the
So we
day.
can, yeah, we
So
can
yes.
edit that. Don't worry.
Okay.
So let's just do it a little,
Okay, that's
just
awesome.
pick a little bit and then let's see. I want to make sure it picks up properly. Yeah,
Okay,
that's wonderful.
so
Mhm.
there were 7 boys crossing the street. Is that better?
No, it's still doing the
Is it
same.
better?
No,
Is it working?
kind of lagging a little bit.
Um,
Okay,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
That's okay.
That'll be our voice over IP is,
Mm.
yeah. So do you want me to do it?
Let's just have a normal conversation, talk about summer, whatever. So I want to see how it is before you share the story again.
Okay. Okay. So during the summertime, it's really interesting because we send out volunteers. They go out and they deliver the bins of food and the produce and the grocery cards to the families individually. They go out in teams of 2, and we have over 50 drivers who then fill up their cars and they go house to house. And sometimes the kids will come running out. I had an experience that was so amazing when I went out. There was a family with 7 children, and they knew I was coming. And when I pulled up with my car, I looked up at the house to make sure it was the house I was supposed to go to. And there were 7 little faces in the windows with their noses pressed up against the panes, waiting. And when I drove up and I got out and I got the first bin out, there was like a collective woohoo from all the kids. They had open windows. All their hands were up in the air and they were dancing. And the older kids came down. I stepped back because it was during the pandemic. I stepped back from the porch and went closer to my car. And they came out. You could hear all of the kids screaming, "Food, we have food. Well, let's see what we have. What's in there?" They were so excited. I couldn't believe it. What it does is it warms your heart. Just warms your heart.
Yes, yes. And in a neighborhood that you will never think that is a family that's really struggling.
You're right. It's integrated everywhere. I mean, it could be your next door neighbor, could be in the basement of your apartment, could be anywhere really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just, I loved your word, do not judge. And I think that's so important. We have to remind ourselves every day, these families are not going through this because they want to.
Yeah.
It's their situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can be exposed to that, we're so vulnerable as humans, right? So we never know. So don't judge because you don't know what your situation may bring tomorrow. We take life for granted and nobody wishes that for themselves or let alone for their own children. I want to hear that story about that young boy that you had an interaction. I want to hear that beautiful experience that you had with him.
It was an amazing experience for me because you work at doing this every day and you don't always see the outcome. And I have a very specific thought of what the program is doing, right? I feel that the program is feeding them physically. What I didn't realize that it's feeding them emotionally and socially. So I was at the corner of, well, it was Activa, close to where we used to be. We've moved. But I was driving my car up the road and had to stop. There were 7 boys going across the street and they were all eating chocolate bars and chips. And one of the boys in the middle of the pack stopped and looked at me kind of sideways, took his head and kind of tilted it a little bit and looked at me. And then I leaned forward so he could see my face. And when he looked at me, he pointed his finger at me and he held up his chips and he pointed at his chips and then he pointed at himself and then he made a heart with his hands. And I sat there, of course, completely emotionally fell apart because I thought, this is a young boy, again, who knows his situation and realizes that we made a difference in his life. And how we made that difference, not just gave him food for his tummy, but we gave him a situation where he could reach into his bag on the Friday morning, pull out that bag of chips, and join the other boys who had money to go to the store. And he could say, oh, I already have my own bag of chips. I don't have to go to the store, but I'm going to come along because I feel just the same as you. I have a bag of chips. So it just suddenly made me realize that these kids understand their situation very clearly. It's not like they're going through life obliviously. No, they're totally in the know about their situation. And when you can give them something that changes their life just a little, it's our slogan, feed the hope of children. It's way more than just their tummies. You're reaching deep inside their souls and giving them something that they didn't have before. And that's going to change their lives and our lives, our community's lives for the good. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And you did talk about normalizing their life, right? And give them that sense of belonging and acceptance. So that young boy didn't feel, I'm less than, so that kind of it actually boosted his confidence, his self-esteem, knowing that I got this and nobody has to know my situation. Nobody has to know what I'm going through, but I do understand this. I own this. I accept this. And to be around his friends in a manner that he's not being judged. That's just beautiful.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was that particular experience for me was life-changing actually for me, how I perceived the program completely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be very clear too, because you brought up a good point on not having this be something where a child is limited or made to feel badly because they're on this program. This program is very quiet. Children are identified through the school system, and they're approached by the families that are approached by the schools, teachers, principals, not by us. And so they're asked if they'd like to be part of this program, which is totally free. There's no means test. They don't have to prove that they, can't afford. The teachers know. The teachers know if the children are losing weight, if they're away from school a lot, if they're ill, whether they're having problems. If you're ever in a school and you see a child absolutely throw a fit, they're often not because they have some physical issue that is causing that. It's often because they're so frustrated and angry and hungry that they can't contend with what's going on in their lives. So that is what our program is trying to achieve. And we do it quietly. Their only way anyone else would know that a child had, a bag from somewhere. They're not labeled. Nobody knows it comes from Food4Kids. They think it comes from the school, which we want because we want to build that community. But the big thing is that the only way that anyone would know is if a child reached into a bag and went, wow, I've got a green pepper. I love green peppers. That would be the only way that someone would know, right? That wasn't normal. So children are so precious.
Yes. And so how do people reach out to you? How do they support you? What are the best areas? I know you welcome financial support as well, but what are the areas that they can support you if it's food, and how can they reach out to you?
Well, they can go on our website at food4kidswr.ca, and it's food number 4 kids WR, so waterlooregion.ca, and read through and learn about our organization. And there is an area that they can donate directly, and it goes through Canada Help, so they get their charitable receipt immediately, and the funds are deposited directly into our account. They can reach out and they can talk to us about doing like this little girl Taya did, do some kind of fundraiser where they're involved, their local communities involved, their families are involved, and they can really expand the knowledge within our community about what we're trying to achieve. And that's really wonderful because sharing knowledge and sharing information about the needs of our families is community. And that's really good. You can volunteer. Call us at the office at 519-576. I can't remember my phone number. It's 519. Isn't that awful? I want to give you my cell phone. It's 519-576-3443. That's terrible.
That's
And,
okay.
and and talk to us about volunteering, because that would be really wonderful. How to lend your skills to what we do. You can do a food drive. Call us, because we only accept certain types of foods. We aren't a food bank, so we don't take things like bags of flour and things like that. We need 860 of every item that we have that we need. So if we get a lot of things we can't use, we end up donating them to the food bank. So things that we use a lot are like oatmeal, individual oatmeal packets. Kids get oatmeal every single week. Goldfish as a treat in the little packages. They get that every week. They get cereal every week. They get milk every week, but it's shelf stable. Everything that we give them is shelf stable. There are all sorts of food products that you could pick up at Costco or at the local store, at a Mars, or any of the halal food stores. It would be amazing. So there's lots of opportunity. Just give us a call, or go on our website and contact us by email, because that we love to talk to people. And it's been very quiet lately because of COVID. So
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing that. What is your role in the organization? I know you mentioned something about passion. Do you mind just touching that on, and then we can wrap up?
thank you. Yes, I am the Chief Passion Development Officer, and that was coined by a volunteer. I'm the executive director and the founder of the organization, and I work with a very strong board of directors and many volunteers and a staff that is killer, just amazing people. But passion is something we all need. We need to look at our communities with passion and know that any little thing that we do for the good, soldiers of good, let's talk about that kind of thing, is really putting yourself at the back of the list for 1 minute and putting others forward and saying, what can I do for someone else today? What's amazing about that is that's really uplifting. So you might be feeling really bad about something, about being isolated, about COVID, about anything. And you put someone else before you, and suddenly it elevates you. So small things, they don't have to be big. You don't have to save the world, but every little step in our community that happens saves our community. So if you can give anything, small amount of money, your time, your gifts and skills, so much can change the world. And there are so many agencies like ours that could use your help. So yeah, thank you. Thank you to our community. And thank you, Fadhwa, for giving me the opportunity to share about our kids and the need in our community.
My pleasure, Kelly, my pleasure. I'm actually honored for you to be here. And just like you said, what can we offer? And for me, in a way, I offer this space to you so you can bring in and share your message. So what can we all offer? And if you don't have money, we all have something. If you don't have money, you have something else. You have time, you have a skill, you have resources within you. You have, or around you, resources around you. So we don't have any excuse not to participate in, empowering a community and helping our community. So what is it that you have that you can help somebody else? And just like Kelly said, you may feel in the midst of the pandemic that you're isolated, that maybe you're frustrated or depressed about it, or you're sad about it. Use that energy to do something good. And by doing so, you're elevating that energy that you have, that negative energy that you have within you, and it uplifts you. Why? Because you have done good in the community. So I encourage you, I do invite you to just take one step, one thing. What is it, the one thing you can do to support your neighbor, your community? Our business community needs us. So take your time, money, resources, talent, energy, whatever it is, and push it towards and help our community to thrive. Because if our community thrives, we all do. So Kelly, I am so happy that you're here today, and I will share this with everyone. We'll have contact information, your email, your website, all the information here that people can reach out to you if they need to. And I encourage everyone, please connect to Kelly and the website and all the information that she has provided you. Any last words, Kelly?
Fadhwa, thank you. Just thank you, Fadhwa, so much for this opportunity. And thank you to the listeners who are listening today and seeing the video itself. We're so thankful for you, very filled with gratitude. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Kelly, for the work that you do and your volunteers and all your staff. Thank you, and we greatly appreciate, just like you said, we all can be ambassadors of passion, just like you. We all can be ambassadors of passion. So as I leave you these last words, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Gems of Life Show. You can follow us on Facebook at CKMS Radio at Waterloo 102.7 as well. And follow us, subscribe, share, like, comment, and participate. We all encourage you to do that. And I leave you with these last words: aspire to inspire. Thank you all. Take care and stay well and safe. Bye, Kelly.
Bye. Thank you so much.